Welcome to our show, Fishing Round the World. I'm your host, Scott Chardon, and today we have a very special guest. He is a member of the critically endangered species Gharialis gangeticus, as represented by the IUCN. He is one of the greatest fishermen of all time. It is Gary the Gharial.
Hello, howdy. Glad to be here. I see you using an older picture of me, and I'm flattered.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started looking back at your fantastic life and career as a fisherman?
Absolutely. So my closest relatives are the family Crocodilidae. I've been known to lay my head in many places south of the Himalayas, but mostly just in India. But I found some refuge in Nepal and Myanmar too. As you stated before, we are critically endangered. This is for many reasons. People destroy our habitat, or it just disappears. People have killed many in my family to make handbags from what I hear. And also, as most of us go fishing, people end up killing us out of fear. I guess they scare easy when they show them how big a fish we can catch or just how many fish we can catch. Human and their fragile egos, you know.
Wow. So you mentioned many countries that you can inhabit. Is that also a variety of habitats that you live in as well, or just near some salt water?
Members of our family were once found in Pakistan as well, but our numbers and influence since have diminished in that country. But to answer your question, we are actually a keystone species in freshwater rivers in Asia. And people want to kill us. Crazy, right? But what do I know? I'm just a Gharial.
Unbelievable. Before we get into your spectacular career stretching almost 2 decades and amassing hundreds of fishing trophies, I think myself and the listeners would like to hear what life was like before fame for Gary, the world champion fisherman Gharial. How have you adjusted to the fame, and just what is life like going forward for you?
Oh, wow. There's a lot to talk about here. I guess it goes back to my grandmother, back when our species was still in Pakistan. Back then, in the 70s, the population of our species started to decline dramatically. And if my grandmother wasn't part of a clutch of eggs taken into captivity, I may not be here today. Some of us born in captivity are lucky enough to be placed back into the water, being needed as a keystone species and all. Well, anyway, my pops was reintroduced into the wild, got wild with me mum, you know what I'm saying, and lo and behold, I came out an egg. And just a few short years later, I was on my way to my first fishing title.
Wow, so what actually happened with your grandmother's generation then?
Okay, so there was habitat destruction all up and down the banks of my rivers back then. And these large construction projects put nest sites all in danger, and along with fish nests interfering with our fishing time. Humans can only compete with us in the rivers with their big, bulky, dangerous nets, and legend says that only the strongest Gharials are able to escape the net. I've been lucky enough to avoid the nets at all costs. But the scariest thing from back then, and even still today, are what we call the dark hunts, where people hunt us only for their superstitious needs. I mean, I'm an athlete and all. I believe in superstitions. I never go fishing without my lucky bone necklace. But to think that placing one of us under a pregnant woman actually helps their labor pains, or that burning some of our skin will keep some pest away, that's just ridiculous to me.
It's actually crazy what people will believe. What made you into the fishing machine that you are today, though?
Well, I think it has to do with our smooth scales. Unlike our cousins, our scales are extremely smooth and our bodies are long and slender and streamlined for easy gliding through the water. I was able to use my good swimming skills to herd large groups of fish towards the bank, and being the cunning lad that I am, I used my tail and snout to stun as many fish as I could up onto the bank. From there, it's just easy pickings for dinner. I once actually pulled in 40 plus fish at a time. That's what won me my first trophy and my first trophy wife. But it's not all fun and games. Humans like to eat our eggs. I don't see what's so tasty about eating our babies. I don't eat theirs. But this led me to focus more on reproduction at the time than fishing, and that's just not me. This fueled me to be one of the largest, meanest fishermen in the community. But despite my dominance in many fields, my boss still isn't the largest, and I didn't get the respect I deserve.
Whoa. Let's keep this PG-13 for the listeners here. I feel I'm going to regret this, but what anatomical structure are you referring to when you say your boss?
Yeah, the boss, that's just what we call the bump on the end of our nose. Some people thought we used to be sensitive about this, but really it's just a status symbol to us. The larger the boss, the larger your kingdom.
Ah, okay. So what does the boss do exactly?
Now that's a secret, but what I can tell you is it makes some pretty sweet noises, am I right?
Yeah, well, you got me there. Have you had many offspring during your long career? You know, it's almost 2 decades long now.
Well, like I said, my first wife and myself had a clutch of near 60 eggs, the most that a female can make. We were young, caught up in the moment, waited too long in the monsoon rains. They came faster than we expected, and many of our young just didn't develop. We blamed each other, drifted apart, found other interest. I did try again with my current wife, taking into account the dry season around March and April. And the wife and myself are actually raising 35 little fishing machines.
Ah, congratulations.
Thank you. I'll let you know this. I might be territorial, but do not go near the wife after them babies hatch. Lord have mercy.
Oh, well, I appreciate those wise words. I'll keep that in mind. A couple last things before we finish up here today. What do you think the future holds,
On
not only
warm
for Gary
May
and your
nights,
family, but the whole rest of your
bizarre-looking
population?
crocodiles haul themselves
Well, as
far
for
up
me,
the
I
sandy
plan to
banks,
spend my retirement days doing as
beckoned by
much basking in the
strange
sunlight on the
sounds.
banks as I can get away with. I'll teach my youngins all I know about
This
being a
female
world-class
Gharial
fisherman in the
is
meantime.
responding to calls from her
But as far
young,
as concerns,
telling her they're
with
ready
humans
to
out of the
enter their new
equation,
world.
there isn't much to be concerned with. I've got some letters from our saltwater cousins about some tick infestations showing up, but it's hard to say if it will become a problem for our small community whenever we get presented with those diseases that those nasty little buggers hold. Realistically, though, I think our biggest issue is just the human interference. Our numbers are really small to start with, and people keep encroaching on my territory, and I don't like it, they don't like it, and things get ugly. I just ask for safe nest sites for my children and their children and so on, non-polluted fish when we eat, and not being shot when we come out of the water to bask when we're just cold.
Wow, yeah, that gives us a lot to think about. And I would like to thank our very special guest, Gary the Gharial, and having you shed some light on the hardships you faced growing up in India and many of the challenges you still face today. Thank you to the affiliates for allowing us the spectacular footage of Gary during his whole life. And join us tomorrow as we break down Gary's world record-breaking haul that won him title of the world's greatest cold-blooded fisherman. Thank you.